窒息させる気がない。この野郎、しがみついたまま気絶してやがる。
あれ、そういやゾロ、なんでお前まで波に追われてたんだ？下の町にいたのか？
いや別に。
煙突に刺さってた。
What's up, everybody? It's round number 3. We got some Zoro gameplay going against probably one of the best Blackbeard players locally. He's really just a fantastic player. Plays a lot on the rank sim as well. Is pretty high up on the rank sim. I think he was like in the top 100 or so of highest berries at the end of the season, or top 64 or something like that. But yeah, really good player, and I ended up winning the die roll. And you're thinking, you know, why aren't you going, you know, you should be going first. Well, you actually want to go second against Blackbeard, and here's why. Blackbeard loves its even curve so much, and they really love to get to 10 cost Blackbeard as fast as possible. So for me to take them off of that is just one extra turn that I get to swing in before they get to establish their big boss monster. And that's pretty much all Blackbeard likes to do. They like to control the game early, and they like to start slamming 10 beards at the end of the game to try to shut you out. And so I start off with a Kureha into a Nami on good old my Tudon turn here. Able to go double searcher is pretty nice. It just means that if my opponent plays any Lafitte's out, I can just easily swing into them with my little bodies on the board. And I know Blackbeard is often not going to be using leader ability very early in the game, because you know they want to keep their hand size up as they get later into the game here. Opponent's going to go 6k into lead. I'm just going to go ahead and take that one. Did have a 2k in hand off of Nami, but we're going to end up saving that a little later here. We're going to go to our 4 Dawn turn, and we do have the nice Tony chopper that we pulled off of the Dr. Kureha. You may be asking, you know, does it matter the order in which you play either of the searchers? Honestly, not really, especially in the early game. But once you get into the later game, if you've got both options in hand, you have to do a little bit of thinking based on how many animals did you see, right? So I know I only have like 12 to... I think I have 12 animals in my deck. No, 16 animals in my deck, right? 16 out of 50 cards. So you definitely got to do a little bit of math when you're playing out searchers, just so you don't see the wrong half of the deck here. But we're going to go and look at the top 5 off of a good old chopper here. Opponent has not used leader ability yet, and unfortunately I do completely miss on the chopper here. But oh well here. And just like I said, having the little searchers early means I can just take out Lafitte as quick as possible, so that's really great for me. Opponent's going to just continue to use the stage to keep searching for good cards here. Said good card is Kuzan. This could be a perfect Kuzan turn. Opponent's going to go 5k into the Nami. Wants to try to clean up those little bodies, because again, those little bodies do end up becoming a threat towards the end of the game here. Once my opponent starts to establish some big Blackbeard blockers and only has like 1 or less cards in hand, these 5k swings can potentially get in here. And opponent flexing one of the new cards for the Blackbeard deck, in addition to Kuzan, is the Shiryu, the 4-drop Shiryu that comes in and KOs a 3 cost or less as an active main, which is incredibly good against Zoro here. Being able to clean up my chopper before my chopper can really do anything here. If we look at my hand is pretty rushed up here. Got a whole lot of rushers in play potentially. Do have the 5 cost Luffy that I could play here, which is pretty solid. I did see my opponent pick up a Liberation earlier in the game. I think that's what that card's called. It's the 6-drop that can KO to a 4 and a 6 if I have more characters than my opponent. So honestly, it might be worth it here to try not to overextend myself. And because the chopper didn't find anything and then he cleaned up the chopper, I might be able to sit underneath Liberation here for a little bit. So actually, we're going to go ahead and go for a different play here. We're going to swing 5k into lead. We're going to swing 6k into lead. We're just going to try to get as many cards out of my opponent's hand, or just try to take life. Then we're going to play a Zoro, and we're going to swing another 6 into lead. Opponent rips I bid 500 million, I think is what it's called. A pretty awesome tech card for Blackbeard decks. Its trigger is wild. It KOs a 6 or less off of a trigger, which is pretty insane, and also just a nice little a nice stage target as well for discarding to look at cards. But this card is crazy. It has like 4 different modal abilities. One of it like bounces characters, kills characters, bounces stage. I don't know if it gets rid of a stage, but it does a whole lot. And pretty crazy tech card, pretty awesome trigger for the Blackbeard deck to help them out here in the early game. So opponents picking up a Lafitte off of this. They're going to go ahead and continue swinging into my board, try to clean up as much as they can. And very unfortunate that I lost my Zoro off of a trigger, but opponent's going to play out Lafitte. Going to look at the top 5, grab another 2k to hand, and Lafittes are incredibly annoying for me as it's just going to continue to just gain so much card advantage. Every turn they're going to look at the top 5, going to grab a card. They're going to look at the top 3, grab a card off stage. So my opponent's going to have just infinite selection every turn. I'm going to play out Kuzan. Kuzan's going to bring out one of the big boss monsters, Jesus Burgess. That Burgess is likely going to be nigh unkillable this game. And my opponent decides to start using leader ability, pitching the Liberation, as it's very unlikely that that card's going to end up popping off, which in turn is actually going to be pretty great for me. I knew that once, you know, there was a potential doubt in my mind that my opponent might have had a second one in hand, but as soon as my opponent kind of pulled down the guard, threw the Liberation away, I started to feel a little bit better about my position. But this is a little scary. Burgess here is going to start cranking up the clock at me, and I just kind of have to get on board again and just continue to swing here. And I also need to, I might need to deal with that Lafitte here. It's going to be a pretty big decision point potentially this turn, as my opponent's about to go, I think, in a 9 Dawn. I am on my 8 Dawn turn, and got a little bit to work with. I'm kind of thumbing the Chopper and the Luffy here. That could be just the play I end up going for. We could go 7k. So yeah, we're going to play out the new Luffy. This Luffy is fantastic in this deck. Honestly, an all-star player. Funny enough, I only run 3 copies of it in the deck, but it just the fact that it attaches a Dawn to leader, enables a Zoro's ability, allows you to go 7k, is pretty insane. Opponent's gonna give me 2/2ks to get out of that 7k hit. Opponent's still at 3 life, and now I'm trying to think here. What should I do? I could go for the Chopper blocker just to try to protect the Luffy, right? If my opponent starts to go for board, which they've been doing a pretty good job of doing already, but I've built up a bit of a catalog of 2ks in my hand at this point. So I do think I could likely keep the Luffy alive if my opponent decides to commit some attacking resources, right? If my opponent does just have a kill spell from hand, that would feel pretty bad. But I think what we're trying to do here is decide where we want to send the Zoro. And we end up sending it at Lafitte, and I'll tell you why. Lafitte is going to continue to find my opponent cards. Likely for the rest of the game. There's never going to be another opportunity for me to attack into the Lafitte, right? Every turn after this, I'm going to be sending things at face, right? Because we're getting to those very intense turns of the late game, right? Very crucial turns where my opponent's going to start playing Blackbeards, and I'm just never going to have an opportunity. And if they're not summoning Blackbeards, they're going to be searching with Lafitte's to find other cards. And just way too powerful. Gives my opponent way too much selection here in the late game. I don't want to have them to be able to, you know, pay 1 Dawn, look top 5, and then also use stage as well. It's like, so my opponent's going to be seeing 1 card off the top and potentially 8 more cards a turn to select 2 from, which is kind of insane. So opponent's gonna start swinging at me. I take a 5k, then counter out of a 5k, and then they do find the finger pistol. Very unfortunate. Was really hoping I could protect the Luffy here. And they just decimated here. And opponent's just gonna go 9k. I'm gonna take that as well. Gonna try to hold as much counter in hand right now as possible, just to try to continue to save board. But things are not looking great for me right now. I do have what I would consider my ace in the hole for this matchup, and that is good old Rush Luffy. Rush Luffy, fantastic card. Because it can't be blocked if you attach 2 Dawn to it. So this is a potential out here if my opponent somehow goes to 0 life and has a bunch of big Blackbeard blockers on board. Opponent playing another card that I haven't seen in a lot of Blackbeard builds. And, Katarina Devon, I think is her name. Basically, you get to give her blocker, a double attack, or banish every turn. So it's a 5-cost 6k blocker, which is going to be pretty solid in this moment here. Would really love to see like a Gum Gum Mulgun would be pretty nice. I ended up skipping that over the Sanji earlier in the game, but we gotta kind of think here what we want to do. 1 Dawn on lead automatically. Always want to get 1 Dawn on lead. And we do have a Robson we could play. We don't have leader ability. We do not have on plays this turn, so that Sanji is going to be absolutely useless. But we could play the Robson out. Don't really want to play out the... don't want to play out the other Luffy, right? I want to keep Luffy as a surprise, right? As we go into the late game, I want my opponent to think none the wiser that I have a potential kill kill option in my hand. So we're just going to attach another one to lead. I think we're just going to go 7 here. We're going to go 7 at lead. Opponent's just going to take it, right? We're going to keep trying to eat cards off my opponent here. And we might end up swinging pretty heavy with Chopper here, as we don't really have a great option. Would have really loved that Luffy to stay around the turn before, but this has kind of put me in a bit of a spot here. Right, I haven't seen another 3-cost Chopper. That 3-cost Chopper would have allowed me to continue to fill up the board here. And my opponent's got a bit of a presence on board. Got a Burgess, a blocker, and that Shiryu has an other ability, right? Not only can it kill something when it comes down, but it also has plus 2k on my turn, right? So gonna be harder for me to kill here. And I think we're just gonna attach 2. We're gonna go 7 lead again. It's a little 7 lead, and I'm gonna give minus 3,000 to his blocker. So Chopper's other ability, if you got 2 Dawn attached, you can give minus 3k to a character. Opponent rips another trigger off life. I bid 500 million to clear my Chopper here. And we're going to play Robson out. Robson, another cool card that can get Rush here. And we're going to just swing another 7k. So 3 7ks in one turn. Opponent takes 2 life and then blocks the other. Opponent's at 1 life. I have 1 Dawn up. I drew a Shut Up and Come With Me the last turn here, and this is likely going to be the turn that my opponent slams down a Blackbeard, which would be pretty unfortunate for me, but it's definitely what typically happens on the 10 Dawn turn and every turn after here. Opponent with 4 cards in hand did just search for another card here, and things are hanging in the balance right now. If I can shave that 1 card, that life off of my opponent, this surprise Luffy attack could just go for game here. And we're going to see a 5k go into Robson here. Another 5k going to Robson. I'm just going to counter the heck out of it here. I'm going to force my opponent to swing a Burgess into it. Opponent swings the Burgess, I believe, into life here. We got to remember, we're going to do the Shut Up and Come With Me, because we cannot forget to use that ability here. We're going to try to find something cool. We end up looking at the top 5. We find a Chopper blocker, and that's pretty solid for me. And opponent's going to likely just slam the 10 down. We're going to make sure that we take that life, because Shut Up and Come With Me does not have any counter. Opponent's going to shut down my Chopper blocker, and then he's going to pass back to me. And would you believe it? That is a manga Blackbeard. Would you believe that this guy has 4 manga Blackbeards in his deck? Right, he's got a whole play set of them. That shows how dedicated he is to the craft of the beard, the craft of the martial D teach. And going back to me now, this is the turn. I just picked up a 3-cost Chopper. This is the turn I have to try to bait my opponent into going to 0, right? So I have to set up my Dawn correctly, but it's kind of hard. I can't be too suspicious, right? I need to leave at least 7 Dawn up. I can use 1 Dawn on leader plus 2 Dawn on Robson to swing 6k, 7k, and then could use the other 7 Dawn, 5 of it to play out Luffy, 2 of it to attach to swing 9k, right? That's like the perfect scenario for me. My opponent also did not use leader effect, so that means that Sanji in my hand is online. My opponent only has 3 cards in hand. I think this late in the game, it's definitely hard for them to think about leader affecting, just because they really need that counter. Right? If I decide to randomly drop 3 Rush Zoros, right, and swing a bunch of 6Ks, my opponent needs some counter in hand, but I do not have those options available to me. So I wanna kind of feel the waters here. When I play matchups like this where things are on the wire, right? A decision could be made on either side that could lead to defeat or to victory. I really gotta think here. So, plan A, we swing 6k. I think regardless of plan A or plan B, we're likely gonna swing twice, and that 7 Dawn could be used towards 2 things. Option number 1, we go for the Luffy to try to kill. Option number 2, we go for double blocker. So I swing 6k, opponent counters out of it with 2k. All right. Okay, let's go for 7k. Can we set my opponent down to 0? Opponent shows me 1k, 2k, goes empty-handed. I do not have what I can to finish him this turn. That Chopper on the field can't attack. So we're gonna go with plan B, right? We always gotta make sure we have a plan in every situation. So my opponent forces me to go with plan B. And instead, we're going to go, okay, we're going to blocker, and we're going to try to stall for another turn. Okay. I only have 1 2k counter in hand. This life has to have counter. My opponent just picked up a Shiryu off the only card by discarding a card. Shiryu, remember, is the new one that KOs a 3 cost or less when it comes into play. So just think, so I'm basically -1 blocker at this point. I've got 2 blockers, 4 attackers. This is going to be tough. Honestly, it's really relying on what comes out of life at this point. Unfortunately, got a little bricked. I would have loved to drop some more counter off the chopper, but I did not. So we're going to see how opponent decides to slice this up. Opponent's going to go 8k lead. I cannot counter out of this. I also shouldn't block this either. I should take the hit. Because if the hit gives me counter, I have a higher chance of living. Especially because my opponent decided to attack. This way also showed me the Shuryu, so I know that forward on off to the side is something I have to be aware of. So I have to take this hit. I cannot block because I cannot get out of any of the higher attacks. He's got an 11k on board and a 12k. And guess what I hit out of life? I hit 2k. So I got double 2k for this other 8k hit, which if you guys know, that pretty much seals the game at this point. We're gonna go to 9k here. Opponent can attack Burgess into Robson, and I can just let it go. My opponent's no longer focused on game. My opponent plays the Shuryu out that he showed me, pops a blocker, and passes back to me. Cannot afford to swing with Blackbeard. And that play line there is what sealed us the game. Deciding to not overcommit on the Luffy 2 turns before and just waiting it out to see what my opponent did allowed me to set up 2 blockers, which allowed me to go for lethal. Opponent had no cards in hand, hit something off life, and then I had enough to kill him. And that, my friends, is how you squeak out a victory against Blackbeard. You got to be patient, you got to have mind games, and you got to not overextend. Thanks everybody for watching. Also, here's the deck list. If you comment asking me for the deck list, I'm gonna shame you. I'm gonna tag your tweet. I'm gonna tag your comment because you obviously aren't watching to the end. But anyways, if you enjoy this type of content, definitely subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.